What up, guys? Joachim here, Joachim Justin Morgan, coming at you with another video. And the last video that I made, I kind of dealt with some of the issues that Catholics will often criticize the Orthodox Church for. And I kind of was showing where, like, these are very unfounded issues that show, one, a discrepancy between the way that ecclesiology or the church has typically functioned versus the way that the Catholic Church functions today. They are inconsistent with one another. And the criticisms that some of these Catholic online apologists will levy at the Orthodox Church today makes it very evident that the way that the Catholic Church functions today is not the way that the Church of the first millennia functioned. And number two, well, I actually don't remember what I was going to say about that. But so that was kind of what the previous video that I dealt with, that I made dealt with. So this video, however, is going to deal with an area where I think is mostly off the radar of most Catholics and is an actual criticism I think they could levy at the Orthodox Church, at least in America and in most Western countries. So the patriarchates generally, or bishops of a certain area, have generally functioned over a given area. That's evident in the way that the ecumenical councils play out and the way that ecclesiology has done. But if you look around the landscape in America where I live, that is not the way that the Orthodox Church functions today. In many towns, you can find a Greek parish and a Russian parish, or a Greek parish and an OCA parish, or a OCA, Russian, Serbian, and Romanian parish. And these are all different Orthodox churches that are part of the same church, but they have different bishops. And so I think this is a foreign idea to a lot of Catholics because their church ecclesiastically functions in a way that is not like the church has historically functioned. But it does simplify their process a lot. Of course, it makes it easy to go into different teachings or things that the church has not taught previously either. But this ecclesiastical problem that we have in America is a problem. Like, the way that the Orthodox Church functions is a problem. It's not something that is a false issue. That is actually something that I think is an issue. It's a well-known issue. Father Alexander Schmemann wrote several articles that I know of on the topic, and that it is, I remember him stating that it is it is the single most significant issue facing the Orthodox Church in America. And that is the fact that we have multiple bishops overlapping in geographical areas. And that is not canonically permissible by the church. The church canons that have traditionally ordered the Orthodox Church, they permit bishops to be over a certain geographical region. Well, in the city where I live, there are at least, there's two overlapping jurisdictions of the churches that exist in my city. There are actually quite a number of overlapping jurisdictions that govern this area where I live, but there's only two churches in my area. So, yeah, that actually becomes even more complicated. While making that statement, it occurred to me that there's actually quite a number of bishops that govern this area, even though there's only two churches here. I was only thinking of the two churches. But so I don't know if I'm explaining this very well, but I think from what I've said so far, you kind of get the idea of where the problem lies. But what I wanted to do in this video is more talk about the history of how we got to this point and some of the problems that it brings up, because they are problems. And so one of the things that I think is important to remember is that America is a very young country. We forget that. I was born here, and when I was born, the country had already been existing for quite a while. It wasn't until around World War II, in the kind of headed towards the mid-1900s, that America became a huge superpower. Before that, most people kind of thought of America as, geographically worldwide, they thought of America as a kind of backwards, backwater country, not really contributing to the worldwide geopolitical landscape very much. That all changed after World War II. America became a huge superpower, and it has grown and continued to be that today. So, I mean, you could go into like political reasons of why it changed and what happened with World War II, the Industrial Revolution, and all those things. And those are, I think, factors in this conversation. But to go back a little bit further, before that, there was a day when America, the Orthodox Church in America, was one united jurisdiction. We had one jurisdiction under the Patriarchate of Moscow. And that may seem odd to some of you who today know Russia through the lens of the Communist Revolution or the Russian Revolution in 1917, and then the rise of the Bolsheviks during that era, and then communism and the Cold War, and that's how you know Russia. But Russia actually existed for many, many centuries before that, going back, it became an Orthodox country sometime right after the year 1054, when there was a schism between the Eastern and Western Church. They actually referred to Moscow as the New Rome for a while at one point, because they believed, actually, was it Moscow or was it Kiev? I think, whatever the Moscow Patriarchate eventually became, for a while it was thought to be the New Rome, because it was such a large territory, a large jurisdiction that became part of the Orthodox Church and was embraced into the Orthodox Church. And today it stands as a major part of the Orthodox Church. I think 2/3 is what I read before. 2/3 of Orthodox faithful live in Russia. So that's, or at least are part of the Moscow Patriarchate. I might be messing some of those details up, I'm not sure. But there's a major part, anyways, of the Orthodox Church that is part of Russia. And America, at one point, up until the Communist Revolution, was part of that jurisdiction. So America was a united Orthodox, it wasn't an Orthodox country, but the Orthodox Church in America only had one jurisdiction. It was a united jurisdiction under the Patriarchate of Moscow. So how did that change? How did that shift? And that is because of the Communist Revolution, or the Bolshevik Revolution that led to communism. And what they ended up doing was calling many, many priests and bishops back from America, people that were here serving in converting the English people, the people, us people of English descent that had founded this country and were living here and existing. So they were set in doing a very good job of converting many people that were here at that time, and then the people from the Germans, French, and all of the people from all over the world that were beginning to come to America, or that were flooding into America at that time. They were converting those people to the Orthodox faith. Well, as they were called out, as they were called back to Russia because of the turmoil and war and difficulty that was going on in Russia, this left a vacuum, and just kind of oversimplify the whole process. It left a lot of unmanned parishes and a lot of communities that were not being served within Orthodox Christianity. So the response to many bishops around the world was to send priests or send whoever to America in order to serve those ethnic communities. Well, that led to some of these issues. There were, I think there were discussions of ways to address that early on, but what ended up happening is that instead of being one jurisdiction or under one bishop, as the church has always existed before now, the Orthodox Church in America ended up being sectioned out into different jurisdictions. So, and they were overlapping. So there was this rise of the Ecumenical Patriarchate. I think he's the first that I know of to kind of take this view. But they said that they would be the patriarchate, or the bishop of the diaspora of their people. Well, this is not something that existed before that. It exists now in America because it was an immigrant country with people coming from all over the world to one place. So this is not something that the church canons deal with exactly, like having a bishop over an ethnic group of people. Bishops are not generally done that. That's not the way that the church canons lay out. The church canons lay out bishops over geographic regions and areas. So the fact that the ecumenical patriarchate then claimed to be or established being a patriarchate or a bishop over a diaspora of people, namely the Greek people in that case, this fundamentally changed the way that that Orthodoxy or that jurisdictions and bishops were dealing with governing a certain group of people. So it kind of created all kinds of other problems, and problems that I think continue to plague the Orthodox Church today. So I know like the parish where I attend was actually started because many of the people that started that parish and went there had initially gone to the local Greek parish. And when they got there, they said, hey, I'm interested in the Orthodox Church. I want to become an Orthodox Christian. I believe this is the true faith. And what they were told back even through the 90s and early 2000s were that you're not Greek. You should go become either Catholic if you're like Italian or French or something like that, or if you're English or Scottish or Irish or Welsh. Well, I guess Irish you could become Catholic. I don't know. They were basically telling people to go either become Catholic or Anglican because those were where they should be. Well, you can kind of see there's some major problems with that because the Orthodox Church at the same time that was going on, and that's my specific city, but that's a similar story that I've heard unanimously everywhere. Does that happen today still in 2024? I don't really think so. Most people tell me like, oh, I've never experienced anything like that, but there are people that have come to the Orthodox Church like in the last 10 years. So they're maybe ignorant or unaware of how the Orthodox Church had been functioning before that. But if you kind of ask around and get to know the history of some of these people and places, like you kind of see like things that were not very Christian and definitely not very Orthodox Christian. Like being told to go become something else because of your ethnic background. That is not an Orthodox way of being. That is how like the Greek parishes. But I think that the Greek parishes in America were functioning that way because they were a parish built, designed, and set to be there in a non-canonical way, such as having a patriarchate on the other side of the world who is a patriarchate over an ethnic group of people as opposed to a geographic region. So you can see where, like, I hope at least that you can see where an issue arose with the way that canonical status was being dealt with and canonical churches were being established versus the way that they had traditionally been understood and established. We created a canonical problem through sending people around the world and having bishops overlap in jurisdictions this way. It created something called jurisdictionalism. So I've heard many Greek priests and Greek bishops discuss this topic, and they talk about the sin of jurisdictionalism. And I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. I get that. But then they usually go on to talk about why they should be like the jurisdiction, like the jurisdiction of America. Why like the Greek, and I'm like, I'm very confused by this because like, knowing the history, you weren't originally the jurisdiction that was here. And today you kind of still exist in a way as an ethnic jurisdiction. Like you see that when you go to Greek parishes. If I go to a Greek parish, which I do, I don't have any problems with going to Greek parishes. Especially if I'm traveling, like going somewhere and there's no other Orthodox church around, I would generally go to one of the Greek parishes if it's what's available in the town. So I'm not saying I have an issue with those parishes, but I think that there is like kind of an ethnic identity, and I'm not Greek. I speak Greek, and I've been to Greece, and I've been to Mount Athos, and those are all wonderful things, but I'm not interested in pretending to be Greek, or even if I did have like a Greek grandparent, like that would only be one of my 4 grandparents that were Greek. So I would still be like 3/4 something other than Greek. And, I generally have this idea, and it's kind of personal to me, but I think that it's probably at least some truth to that. If you are Greek or Russian or Japanese or whatever the case may be, and you're really concerned about maintaining those things, you probably should have stayed in those countries because this is America. And as soon as you come here, you should probably realize that your children are going to be far less exposed to that. And if they go back to those countries where you're from, it's going to be a foreign country to them because they're not Greek, Russian, or Japanese. They are Americans. And they might feel like a foreigner because you raise them to be that way, but as soon as they go back to those countries and see it looks nothing like the country they're from, they will realize very quickly, I'm not Russian, Greek, or Japanese. So even me, as a British American, if I go to England, it is very, very similar to America. I mean, people may not, like British people that have some kind of arrogance about the historical aspects of their country might not like that, but politically, culturally, our cuisine, our ethics, the way that we view life is extremely similar. You know, that's true. It's a little bit different. Like I'm, so much, I think the highest percentage of something that I am is from Scotland. But then, so like Scotland, Ireland, my name, Morgan, is Welsh. If I go to any of those countries, like it is a little bit different, but kind of the same idea. Like they're all, relatively similar. They may not like that, but, they speak the same language. They have a certain ethic. There are areas they're very different in, and I think they blow those things out of proportion. But at the same time, like they are all very similar. But even me, as someone who actually is in a country that was founded by the same thing that my ethnicity, my language, and everything comes from, I'm still not British. If I go to England, I am not an English citizen. I would probably have a very difficult time becoming an English citizen. So, like, I don't really get the idea of like establishing the Greek patriarchate in America and like having like Greek flags all over the church, not all over, but having them in the church when you get there. Like it's not Greece. This isn't Greece. We don't live in Greece. And our general idea, I think, in the Orthodox Church should not be to promote and continue our ethnicities, which is kind of what has, I think, happened as a result of jurisdictionalism. I think those are all things that were baked into the cake that came with the idea of establishing a patriarchate across the world with the idea of being part of a ethnic idea or diaspora of people. As soon as those Greek people came here to America, they started to become a lot less Greek. They were living in a foreign country. Their children were not Greek. Their grandchildren most certainly are not very Greek. They probably don't even know very much Greek as a language unless they've studied it, which Greek people in Greece don't learn Greek by studying it. They learn it by it's because it's their native language. Now, every one of us, when we go to school, begin to learn our language. I had to take English class, even though I spoke English, but that's different than what I'm saying. So I'm just saying, like, if you learn a foreign language, it is still very different than that being your native language. So I'm just bringing all of these topics up as issues that have arisen, that exist in the church because of some of these ideas of jurisdictionalism and that continue to ostracize outsiders from the church. So in the city where I live, the parish where I attend has very little it has a lot of different ethnic groups all within that same church. So I mean, I'm not even going to go into what's most, because I've generally not talked about the parish where I attend and what it is and where, like, how it's divided up. The only thing I've ever said in all of my videos is that I'm not part of the Greek parish, I think. So, I mean, I've said that for sure. I don't know that I've ever given much detail about the parish that I'm part of. I've talked a lot about the Western Rite, and I've said very positive things about it, but I am not part of a Western Rite parish. That's not, I don't have one near me, and I don't go to one. So I have been to St. Patrick's in Virginia, and I've been to, many Catholic churches, including traditional Latin Mass Catholics and things like that, but they're not Orthodox. They're not part of the Orthodox Church. So that's different. So, and of course, I don't participate in communion in those. So I'm not part of that church. I'm not in communion with those churches. So even if they allowed me to come forward, which in spite of their own catechism, I have explicitly been told not to come forward in a Catholic church by people at that church. So like, that's not what their catechism says maybe, which I think does actually talk about it's way off topic. Anyway, so to kind of bring this video in for a close, There was this period after World War II where every patriarchate, every bishop in the world was suddenly sending priests and establishing jurisdictions in America. And today we have a canonical problem of multiple overlapping jurisdictions. One of my spiritual teachers that I love very much, he talked about how to address this problem. And his answer was that those people will die. Like someday the people that want this to continue to be in this way, they will die and the church will become one church in America. He's probably right. That's probably the way that it will be addressed. In the meantime, though, we do have a problem, and it does create some of these problems that I think ostracize outsiders coming in. So if you are somebody who's like me, you're not Greek or Russian or any like from an Orthodox country, you're from England or Wales or Ireland and Scotland and or any other country, Germany, Italy, one of the like 53, 54 African countries that are out there, or somewhere in the Levant. It doesn't matter. If you're here in America and you're going to one of these parishes that doesn't have the same ethnicity as the one that you're a part of, it can be a little bit ostracizing. And that is a challenge and something that you end up having to overcome, and it shouldn't be that way. We, as Orthodox Christians, should not exist that way. So hopefully, if you're watching this and you are an Orthodox Christian, please make sure those people or those visitors coming to your church feel welcomed, and make sure that ethnicity or whatever ethnic affiliation is on your sign out front does not become a barrier to those people's salvation and becoming part of the true church. These things are actually condemned in the scripture. Jesus says, woe to those, and says that it would be better that a millstone be hung around your neck and thrown into the sea than those that would prevent any of these little ones from coming to the kingdom of God. So I think that when you put an ethnic affiliation on your front door and you ostracize people who are not part of that ethnic affiliation from coming into your church, they are, at least spiritually speaking, one of those little ones, and you are actually preventing them from coming into the kingdom of God. So God forbid, may that never happen. I don't know what else to say about the topic. This was not one of my more eloquent videos. I don't think I said all of the things that I meant to say in quite the way that I meant to say them, but hopefully you hear where there is some issues with these things, and hopefully either if you're a Orthodox person that has thought about some of these things, you can relate to it. If you're somebody who's part of one of those nationalistic identities, hopefully you can be merciful and sympathetic to people that are not coming to your church because they're part of that ethnic affiliation and they're wanting to seek after Christ. That should supersede everything that you would have. If your ethnic identity someday began to persecute Christ and shun Christ, hopefully you would shun that and embrace Christ over your ethnic identity. I hope that's true for most Orthodox Christians. And if you're somebody who's not part of the Orthodox Church and you're coming to some of these churches and seeing these issues, please don't let those things, which are problematic things for the church, prevent you from coming to the kingdom of God. Try to look past those things. And if those are issues that are in the parish we're attending, understand that there are many good parishes out there. I'm not telling you just to run after whatever bishop and run from church to church to church, even within the Orthodox jurisdictions, just looking for something. But if ethnicity is a major factor in the church and it's kind of pushing you as a person outside of that ethnicity out, do understand that there may be other options for you. So those are all just things to consider. You guys take it easy, and I will talk to you in another video coming very soon.